Wait. You're gonna be live, so we'll get this on.
He's live.
Susie.
Looking good, Matt.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. We're gonna get started. Today's course is all about how to walk through a home with your buyer, how to build trust and honesty with them by being able to identify possible issues, not just issues, but updates as well. All the good, the bad, the ugly that comes with showing a house. And I've been able to really build a lot of trust with my clients this way, and a lot of it's just experience. But I'm going to try to give you the knowledge to kind of curtail having been in business 10, 15 years to learn all this stuff. So I'll take questions as we go along. Just raise your hand, and hopefully we can sort through this stuff together.
This is going to be part one, right?
Yeah, this is just part one, and part one identifies the major mechanics of the home. We're going to go over roofs, siding, windows, HVAC, plumbing, foundations, all the major stuff with the house. And then part two will be other stuff that you see with the home, like anchors and piering, and identify asbestos, GFCIs, all that good stuff, okay? So without further ado, let's move on. First thing we're going to cover is a roof. Now, I personally always park on the street when I show a house. And I know some people pull in the driveway and it's cold, maybe you do that, maybe someone has a little baby, they're going to pull in the driveway. But the reason I pull on the street, and usually the buyers will follow suit, because I want to see the property when I'm walking up to it. I want to see the concrete, I want to see the walkways, and most importantly, I want to see the roof, okay? There's really the two main types of shingles you'll see in our town. They're both asphalt shingles. The first one here, as you'll see, is a single tab shingle. You see them all over town. They're a 20-year shingle. That means they're only meant to last 20 years. These were very popular up until the turn of the century. You'll see the majority of homes using these. Okay? Nothing wrong with this roof. It should look flat, laying down. And again, our climate, 18, 20 years max for these. If you're walking through a home that's built in 1993 and it has this shingle, most generally it's going to start looking like this. You start seeing how it's starting to curl on you a little bit. The edges are starting to curl. That means it's starting to show signs of wear and it's towards the end of its life. The other shingle, well, we'll stay on these. Something that you can look at too is patching. You'll start to see a roof that's like right now would be 22 years old if it was built in 1993 in that scenario. You'll see where people have patched it. And you know parts of it have already gone for one reason or another. You see a shingle like this, I mean, I don't think it takes a genius to realize that's gone, okay? That is something, this might get you a couple years, that needs to be replaced right away, okay? The time to replace a roof is not when it starts to leak. Because by the time it leaks and it gets through your insulation and it comes and it starts to show itself on your drywall, you have a wet attic, okay? Let's move on to the next slide. This is the shingle that you'll see majority today of new homes, and they've been that way, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. It's the predominant shingle used. It's a 3-tab laminate architectural shingle. These are meant to last 30, 40 years. They haven't been around that long to say that they're going to do that, but by all intents and purposes, you see them about 15 years old and they still almost look brand new. Okay. The uncommon one that you'll see a lot of these in country club and here and there, is the wood shake shingle. You'll have covenants out in the country club of Clive that originally you had to put this type of roof on. They have since eased those covenants because they have a shake-looking asphalt shingle that you can use, or there's a composite shingle that you can use that looks like that. But these are very expensive to replace. Very expensive. Regular 1,500 square foot ranch, you're looking about 50 grand to replace this wood shake shingle. So, but they do last. I mean, when they're original, they do last. They last almost 50 years, you know, with their properly cared for. Okay. Rolled rubber membrane. You kind of see the photo there. You see those on commercial buildings on flat roofs. You'll also see them on California ranches on the south side. The reason they use rubber membranes on houses is because they don't have the proper pitch for the runoff. It's too flat. Okay, if it doesn't have enough pitch, the shingles won't work. So you see the rolled rubber roofs, the membranes. These are meant to last 10 years, but they can last 20. The black on these, they absorb the sun, and it heats up and it starts to wither away. They do have a paint that they put on these. It's a white paint that serves as a reflective, so it bounces the heat off and they tend to last longer. You'll see these in houses on additions that don't have that pitch, and just realize when you're looking upstairs, you're looking down on it, 10 years is normally the wear and tear you get out of that, okay? Not as expensive to replace as a sheet shingle. Let's move on to foundations. Any of you ever shown a farmhouse where you got into a stone foundation? Yeah, they're pretty rare, but they're out there. I mean, that dates back to like Jesus' time. Okay? that was the standing foundation for like 2,000 years. But you'll still see these in farmhouses. You will, and a lot of times they're accompanied by dirt floors. They don't even have the flat work. You know, whether good or bad is up to the stone foundation. If you went out to the Fort Des Moines out there, where the south side, where those old buildings are, they're all stone foundations, and they've been retuck pointed. They look brand new. You know, they look like sturdy foundations. But obviously, if you see a stone foundation, it's an old foundation. Brick foundations, we've all seen plenty of these, right? Beaverdale homes, built between, you know, you could get them late 1800s, but typically 1900 to 1930 brick foundations. Probably not going to be a dry basement, probably not. You're always looking for straight walls when you're looking at a foundation. Brick ones can be tuck pointed. Guys can come out and grind out the mortar and re-tuck point them and make them look good. A lot of times you'll see the water retention system being put in them and to divert water. We want the next one. This is also a very common one you'll see in the Beaverdale area. It's a clay tile foundation. Now, when they make these in fire. That's how they cast them, okay? So what happens with these actually is they don't shrink as much. They don't shrink and expand as much. We got some bad pictures of here. These aren't the prettiest clay foundations that I probably could have found.
One thing just on the brick, what people should know is they are usually 3 or 4 courses thick. So people get a little nervous sometimes.
It's just a little brick.
It's a brick.
That's good to know. See, I didn't know that.
No, it's 3 or
okay.
Brick foundations are 3 to 4 courses wide.
3 courses wide.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's good to know it's not just a single brick.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh my, it's going to cave in.
Yeah, really. These clay ones, in my opinion, are actually superior than the ones that came after, which was the concrete block ones, because of the fire. They don't shrink as much. Okay, they don't. But you'll see these used from 1920 all the way up to 1950. Yeah, they're typically good foundations. Okay, but again, we're always looking for straight walls. There's always going to be cracks, even in the poured foundations. There's always going to be little hairline cracks. Either they pull the forms off. You'll see them in the seams. You'll see them. That's okay. You're looking for movement, in or out. Okay, that is a first sign of a problem. And there's a difference between a hairline crack and a 1/4 inch crack, right? Right, hairline cracks and this flat work in the walls, no big deal. Things that get a little wider, you might want to have them sealed or looked at by a structural engineer of some sort or a foundation specialist. Okay, concrete block, used from 1950 all the way up to 1980. I mean, you may see people use them today on additions and things like that. Very common to see the stair-stepping crack like that. To me, there's various reasons, and I'll explain to you what I've learned with a mason. We actually got some good photos up here to illustrate that. They were done in different ways during the period. Originally, when they put these concrete block foundations in, they piered them, which is this right here. See this re-rod going through them? And that was the support for them. And they work really well. Now, the only thing with concrete is it's really porous. And it expands and contracts because of the flux into temperatures, which makes the mortar shrink. And when the mortar shrinks, you start to get cracking. Now, some people say with the stair-stepping crack to a corner, it could mean that a footing is even sank. But I don't know that I would get into all that, being that we're not structural engineers, we're not foundation experts. Okay, just something to be concerned about with a concrete block foundation. So let's go back. We'll go back. So they got a little cocky with these concrete block foundations, and they stopped piering them. They started putting, you guys have all seen those pillars that support them. They kind of bump out. Well, that's the only support for those. And that's why you see the frost line cracks running against them, and those are the most inferior concrete block foundations. They tend to move the most because those support pillars aren't doing a whole lot, okay? And then they got really good at it because they started seeing those fail. So then they went back to putting not only re-rod in them, but as you can see, they start filling them with concrete. Those are the best ones. Those ones will be, those are the ones that you see today that are still straight and haven't buckled at all, okay? All right, let's move on to the poured foundations, which, obviously are the best ones for a few reasons. One, you get a tar sealant on the outside now. When you build a brand new home, you kind of see that black stuff you might even see the ground has settled a little bit and that tar has exposed itself, that weatherproofing. But they also put the water retention systems on the outside, the pea gravel, the big black perforated pipe that usually ties into your sump pump, okay? So the old foundations and the old flat work, you'll notice in old homes, those floors, that flat work slopes to it. And why is it sloping? It's made to slope. It's made to slope to a drain. These don't do that because all the retentions around it that you can lay the concrete flat because all the water retentions around it, okay? These are the superior basements. All things being equal, you'd rather see these. These are the ones they first came out with, the 70s and the early 80s. They didn't have a print on them. Now they have this brick imprint, and it's just the forms they take off of them that have that brick imprint, okay? Moving on. Let's go on to plumbing. Galvanized plumbing. Anybody see this stuff in the house? You should be looking for this stuff when you're going through a house. The galvanized plumbing, well, obviously it was good in its day, but if it's still in your home, if it's still in the home you're looking at, you may want to test the water pressure, just see how it is. You can't really see too well on these photos, but what happens is a lot of soot gets built into that line, or get in that line, the corrosion, and it calciumates a little bit, okay? If that's the word. And you can kind of see it on this joint here, right? Typically, this is going to need to be replaced. But the key is this. You can replace this, whether it be PEX lines or copper in the house, but you need to know what's going out to the street. Because if this is galvanized going out to the street and you replace your home full of copper and your seller or your buyer wants to know how come they haven't picked up that much pressure, it's probably because it's galvanized to the street. The one thing I want you to know about this, because some people, the water pressure is fine and they're fine with it and it's working fine, do not allow the utilities to get shut off on them before they take possession. Because as long as there's water in that line, it's keeping the line open. As soon as you shut that line off, all that soot's going to fall in the middle. And then when they go to turn it back on, the water's going to hit the soot, it's going to clog, and next thing you know, you got, just a little bit of water pressure, okay? So it's important if you have these galvanized lines to identify them, show them to your buyer, let them know what they're dealing with, let them know they might be replacing this, but it's very crucial not to let the water get shut off on them as they're transferring utilities. Okay, and again, you can find the main line coming in, and a lot of times you can identify what's going out to the street by looking at going down into the concrete. It'll either be galvanized or copper. Okay, copper is the next one. And copper served us well for a long time. It's a good line. They still calciumate at the joints and stuff like that, but it usually accompanies good water pressure. Now, you can see every time that you turn a corner, you got to solder a joint. So it's harder. Not only is copper more expensive from the material standpoint than the new PEX lines, but they're also harder to install because every time you turn a corner, you've got to solder a joint. Okay. Now, obviously, these things, if it gets too cold, these will break. And this is why foreclosures and everything in REOs waterproof or winterize the property, right? Giving it? No? Okay. So, obviously, it doesn't take much for water in the lines for this to expand and break, okay? Rob, your question?
What would you recommend for a house in the wintertime if you had it listed and it was vacant?
I would recommend that you shut the water off from the main. and then bleed out the lines from a kitchen sink, maybe the highest point, if there's an upstairs, just to get all the lines out, okay? This is also something you can recommend to your clients that might be, they go to Florida for the winter or something like that. Make sure they turn off their water. That way, if their furnace fails in the middle of the winter, they don't know about it. They don't come back to 5 feet of water and a bunch of mold, okay? There's also a new thermostat you can buy called the Nest. You guys have seen that? And you can hook up an app to your phone and you can control the temperature of your house. You can check on the temperature of your house. That would be another thing. But I would still shut off the water if I was leaving for a significant amount of time, or if a property was vacant, just to avoid anything like that. Okay, because technology can fail, obviously, right? Usually you'll have good pressure, and they would still, even if you're replacing your water line, usually the main will still do copper up until the meter, then you might do a new PEX line, which leads us to the next thing. We've all shown new houses, right? We've all seen this. They're PEX lines. They come in that white stuff, or they come in the blue and the red. Obviously, blue means cold water, red means hot water. Great things about this is number one for plumbers, the install. They don't have to solder every time they turn a corner. They just pull the stuff through. So they're ecstatic with it, right? They can get more jobs done, charge the same amount of money, and move on to the next job. But this will also expand to 1.5 times its size before it breaks. So they'll buy you some more time if the furnace went out on you or something like that, okay? This product hasn't been around long enough to know what it's going to do in 20, 30, 40 years, but it's pretty thick milk plastic line. And we know plastic's been around for forever. Okay, so this is the stuff that you'd probably want to do if you're remodeling a house. You're going to probably see most plumbers want to get you into the PEX lines, which is great. They don't corrode and calciumate like the copper and the galvanized. Okay. Sewer lines. Nothing will break your deal up faster than a damn sewer line. But it's important to know, because the knowledge that you give your buyer and the stuff that you can tell them up front you'll build that relationship for life, that kind of trust and stuff for life. So what you're seeing here is a PVC line, and this is a look at all the drains and stuff from the bathroom coming down. And this is what they use today. This is what you want to see. All they do is put a glue on it, stick it together, and it's water sealed. It's pretty easy stuff to work with. They will even do sewer lines today with PVC if you're replacing it, okay? And I'm sure all of you in newer homes, and even ones that have been remodeled, have seen some of this. You might even see some new PVC tied into a cast iron line coming down, okay? And that's perfectly fine. That's what they would do today if they're going to replace it, okay? Cast iron. That's not the picture for cast iron, but
No, it's not.
that's not. But cast iron, we all know what cast iron is. It's very durable. It lasts a long time. It's what they used pre-World War II, and it's what they used a certain time after they stopped using Orangeburg. They went back to it after the war effort. This stuff lasts a really, really long time. I don't want to sit here and tell you that it can't break, because it can. But the majority part, it's in good line. A lot of times you need to do what's called a descaling of it. They actually put a chemical down in it and just descale the walls of it. It looks almost like a fish skin. It just all gets all, you know. So we've had that done. That's relatively inexpensive to do. But it's if you have a cast iron line, chances are it's probably a pretty good line. Chances. Something that you can look for when you're looking around with a buyer when it comes to the sewer line is look for the clean out valve. If it's original, they've never gotten into it, which is a good sign. They never had to get into it. If you see cast iron line with a PVC cap on it, they've gotten into it. And you want to know why. Is it tree roots? Was there a backflow problem? So you can kind of, you know, be Sherlock Holmes about it and figure it out. Because they can't get those caps off without breaking them. So once they get those caps off, a lot of times they stick a screwdriver in there and really just break it up just to get it out. And then they put the new PVC one back in. So that's something you can look for and identify, and certainly your buyer's like, damn, she knows what she's talking about. So, clay lines. Not as bad as Orangeburg, but as you can see, quite possibly close. These clay lines break up on you. Any movement at all, I mean, tree roots, they're susceptible to tree roots. Anytime There's movement in the earth, which there always is. You can see that one up there is horrible. It's broken in a lot of different spots. You will see a lot of these in the 50s done, okay? And you can always recommend Smith Sewer Service or Roto-Rooter, a service to come in there and camera and scope out the lines, okay? Now, the difference between, if the sewer's on your side of the street, it might only cost, depending how big your front yard is, anywhere from $3 to $5 grand to replace your sewer line. Not horrible, but still a pretty big chunk of money. If that sewer line's on the other side of the street, that's about a 12 grand job. That's the difference between going across the street and staying on your side of the street. You have to get the city involved. There's a special concrete mix that they use for the streets, and so there's all kinds of, so when they stick that camera down there, not only are you looking at the line, but you're also figuring out where the sewer hooks up. Now, one guy told me, and this might only be factual in new homes, but where the fire hydrants are, is usually a good indication, but not always, but usually a good indication where the sewer line is on which side of the street. Okay, but that's not 100% fail-proof. Okay, so the only way you're really going to know is by having someone stick a camera down there and run it to the connection. Oh, our favorite sewer line, Orangeburg. Anybody run into this? Quite a bit? Well, you just automatically know any home built between 1941 and 1960. 1960 is really on the tail end of that, but it is, I have seen homes that have had it at that date. You should definitely recommend a camera scope. In fact, when you're looking with buyers and they want to be real home and they're looking at older homes, you set that expectation up right away. You tell them, hey, the majority of the homes we're going to see, you're going to be in this era where you're going to want to spend a couple extra $100 to have your sewer line scoped out. Will it ruin your deal? Possibly. But if they run into this, you've ruined future referrals for your life, and it's worth ruining that one deal and make sure they were taken care of. Because something they didn't know that you knew, that you protected them from, is what will get you the referrals and the trust and stuff like that going down the road, right? Big picture. This stuff was used as a replacement for the cast iron because the war effort in World War II, back when our country was truly great, these iron companies shut down their manufacturings and said, here, you can use our factories for the war effort, and just gave them over to the government. So, and what it is, it's tar paper. It's only meant to last 50 years. If it's in your house, that time is up, right? That time is gone. It's outlived its life. And you'll see homes in Windsor Heights, and you'll see homes, literally the yards are dug up right next to each other because they all seem to fail at once. But a lot of people will get it clogged, and what they do is they stick a knife down there to unclog it, and that knife just rips it right open. So, oops. Obviously prone to cracking, bending, root invasion, splitting. It's not good stuff. It probably was at the time it was put in, but it's not good stuff now, and it really needs to be replaced. And what's kind of nice is, and you can even go back to your clients that you've sold if you want a reason just to contact them. If they have a home in this era and never had this checked, tell them to go get insurance on it. There's a company called HomeServe, I think it's through Waterworks even, that you can insure these lines, and Orangeburg is something that you can insure. And they only insure it to the street, or they only insure it to the street. So if it's across the street, you're on your own from that point on. Okay, but still, to take on $5 grand of the 12 grand for insurance would be better than taking on the 12 grand as a whole.
What's that company called? HomeServe?
Yeah. Go on the next one. The electric. Believe it or not, this is what I have in my house. I almost took a picture of my breaker to show you guys what glass tube and knob looks like. I haven't had any really big problems with it. I haven't had any, things pop breakers on me or nothing like that too often. We're doing sort of modeling and stuff. They're running big saws it did. Big pain in the butt, I think, is probably just replacing the breaker, trying to identify which one's popped and unscrewing it and having another one in there that you screw in. It's not just the old typical, with the flip breaker. But this is brand new electricity right here back when it was invented. This is how it was invented. You see the glass tube and the knob, how the wiring's run. I have found that if you have this in your house, that it can be difficult to insure. So and know that going in. I don't have anything specifically negative to say about it other than the fact that it's old. And you can see homes that have had these before that have replaced the breaker, but you can see those old lines still going out of a few of them. So they didn't replace a few, and a lot of times those lines just go into the attic for an attic light or something. It's not something that's used a lot. But these, these glass tube knob probably should be replaced, at least be pointed out that you might be replacing this, okay? Push button fuses, the push-o-matics. I've owned houses with this too. There's nothing wrong with these. They're just the push button fuses. You can always tell what type of amps you have coming into the home, or usually, I should say, by the top breaker will have 100 or 200 or 150 or whatever. But these, these push button ones were used in the 50s. They still work really well. Typically, it's not a grounded service. Your outlets aren't grounded and stuff like that. But it's a decent panel. I've owned houses with them and they've worked just fine. And then, of course, the next panel that we see is the ones we use today, the switch panels. And what I got here is just your 100 amp panel. You see the size of it versus the 200 amp panel. You see the size of it. And again, that top breaker up there, way up here, is going to tell you the ampage coming in. It'll say 100. That one will say 200. Okay?
You can tell a lot about the size of the inlet pipe as well.
That is true. On the outside, you see
right above the box,
a bigger mass and stuff. But it's just easier to identify. You can just look at the top breaker and stuff.
Well, I was going to say the only thing that's scary about that is they have do-it-yourselfers and like that will put up new 100 amp box in on a 60 amp service. And so
right,
if you see a small inlet, 3/4 inlet going into 100 amp, it's probably not 100 amp.
Yeah, and that's where an inspector is going to come in. And look, guys, what I tell my clients, and I think you should try to do the same, is when my clients say, listen, I'm going to tell you all the good and the bad and the ugly of the house as I see it. Because I want you to know what I know, and I want you to be able to negotiate based on what I know. But you're going to have an inspector come through, because I'm not an inspector. I'm just experienced, and I'll share that experience with you. The inspector is going to come in and tell you all the things that I cannot. Okay, we're going to rely on them as factual. I'm just going to tell you what my experiences are. Don't come across as an inspector. Don't come across, I know so much about homes, you don't need an inspector. Because you're not going to stick your head up in the attic. You're not going to open up every window and every showing. You're not going to test every outlet. You'd be at the house for an hour and a half every house. So just go over with what you know so they feel comfortable that you're honest, that you are knowledgeable, you can be an asset to the process. But don't come across as an inspector. Tell them that there's going to be a time for that. And then that inspector will diagnose the rest of the 15–20% of the things that I'm not able to tell you just from a visual inspection, okay? The city of Des Moines makes you take the meter outside when you update these panels and you get a permit through the city. Mid-America will bring that 60 amp line to 100 amp line for free into the house. But if you see in Des Moines, because I don't know what West Des Moines codes are, or Windsor Heights or that, I don't think Windsor Heights makes you take it outside, but Des Moines does. If you see a brand new panel and that meter still inside, it was not done to the city. That's Uncle Ed that came there and did that panel. Now, Uncle Ed could be a licensed electrician. It could be done beautifully, but there wasn't a permit pulled. The city will make you take the meter outside, okay? So that's one thing you can identify. When you're walking up to a 1940s home and you see that meter outside, you automatically know the panel was updated. Before you even get inside and look at the panel, look, how do you know that? Because I'm awesome. Hold on, go back one more. Zinsco and Federal Pacific boxes are recall boxes. We've all heard this, right? When you're doing your listing walkthrough, look at the box and tell them. Now, you don't have to say, hey, you got to replace this box before I list this house, but what you do want to say is, this is going to come up during an inspection, and you should be aware that we're going to have to bring this to a better box. Now, we can do it now and just replace the box, or we can do it when the inspector says it, and then we got to bring the whole house up to code. You want to spend $1,200, you want to spend $4,000. So those Zinsco and Federal Pacific boxes are recalled because what they have found is that when a wire heats up, that is supposed to trip, right, to stop a fire. These boxes aren't, in some cases, have not tripped. So that wire is allowed to get hot, and then we have a fire. So when your inspector takes off the panel, he's looking really for two things. He's looking to make sure that everything's wired right to the breaker that it's associated with, okay, 20 amp that has the wire to hold that power. He's also looking for double tapping. There's only supposed to be one, like every 15 amp breaker, it's only supposed to be so much power to that 15 amp. And some people try to plug in other stuff, and that's when you have breakers pop. When you have a whole room like this on one circuit, and everybody's trying to plug into something, it'll pop. This room right here is probably on 2 different circuits, more than likely, right? So that's what he's looking for when he's pulling off the box. You're not going to pull off the box. That's not your job. Your job is just to look at it, identify whether it's new, old, updated, if it's a recall box. That's what you can identify. Okay. The GFCI. What does GFCI stand for?
Ground fault circuit interrupter.
You got it. What is it made to do? What is it made to do? What is it designed to do? Why do we have in our inspections everybody saying, I need a GFCI in my water sources. I need a GFCI in my water sources. Anybody know? Because in the water sources, obviously, there's a chance you come in contact with water. And if you have an appliance in your hand and you get caught up in that, you can get electrocuted. These are made that if there's a surge in the power and you come in contact with water, it trips, it breaks right away. So it's a safety issue. If these are not in your water source, not in your bathrooms, not in your kitchens, not in your laundry, not in your exterior. That's where these, your sump pumps and stuff, but not entirely your basement. So
unless it's code.
Your GFCI, and of course they're push buttons. So every now and then in my bathroom, trying to hair dry or something, it wasn't working. Like, oh, it popped. You push the button and it comes back to life. So GFCIs, even if you will see houses that have perfectly good breaker panels, but for whatever reason GFCIs were not installed in the house, and that wasn't code at the time, but it certainly is a safety issue. And on our inspections, what are we looking for? Structural, mechanical issues, and safety issues. That's it. Structural issues, mechanical issues, and safety issues. That's what we're looking for in our inspections. That's what we should expect the buyer's agents to be looking for during their inspections. And this is a safety issue. Not a very expensive one either. 2-prong versus 3-prong. My house has two-prong, and we have these adapters. See that one up there? That one? You need those for all your TVs, because all your major appliances, your computers and everything, now we also have like our computer and some of our things on surge protectors, and I don't know if that would work in a lightning storm or not. We're just trying to, but that's the big issue with these 2-prong. That 3rd prong is a grounding. That's all it is. But what it does, if lightning was to strike your home, it doesn't fry all your flat screens and your computers and things like that. So, and you can see them side by side here, 3-prong versus 2-prong. Now, anybody can put these in and still not ground it. That's why your inspector goes around and tests every one to make sure. You're not supposed to put these in if there's no ground wire. Okay, you can still buy these today, brand new, with the 2-prong. Okay. Now, a lot of times you'll see these upside down. I've found 2 things with that. Number 1, they're trying to tell you that it's not grounded, or 2, it's on a switch. That outlet is on a switch, like for a lamp. Okay, a lot of times you'll see them in new homes turned upside down for that same reason. Just letting you know that outlet is on a switch. It activates on a switch. Now, if you wanted to go through and ground these, it's not terribly, obviously you need an electrician to do it. All they're going to do is take a copper wire to each outlet, and they're probably going to go downstairs on your water line, your copper water line, and clamp it to your water line. They consider that a good grounding source. Okay, but they have to individually go into each one and do it. And sometimes they can cost somewhere around $50 an outlet to do that. And if you have a finished basement underneath you where there is no access to water lines, it could cost even more. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to siding.
Or compared to GFCI.
Siding. Siding is one of those things you look at when you're walking up to the house. And of course, there's all different types of siding. The biggest we'll cover today are exteriors, brick, vinyl, metal, aluminum, and masonite, and hardy plank. Hardy plank, well, let's start with masonite in wood shape. wood shake I have on my house, there's different mills, there's different thicknesses to them. Okay, nothing wrong with it, it's wood. So if you don't keep it painted, it'll rot out. Masonite is the same thing, or smart board siding, okay? The homes that were built in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s have a lot of this stuff. And we got a good picture here, because what this is showing here, what this is showing is that this bottom lip, which often doesn't get painted well enough, what'll happen is when water comes down this thing, this will soak up the water. And you'll see bubbling on the bottom of that board, okay? You'll see it in nail marks, where they've sunk the nail in too far, and that water penetrates in that nail and starts to swell. And then you know that that siding is on its way out, okay? You see this all over the place. If you're seeing a home in the 90s, everything really in homes been the last 25, 30 years. If they have not kept good paint on this siding by painting it every 5 to 7 years, it's going to start rotting out on them. You also see it on the roof lines, where the roof line meets, or siding meets the roof line coming down the garage. You'll see where water gets in that channel. You know, now they'll put more of a flashing underneath there and cut the boards back, so the water hits the flashing and out rather than sitting on that wood. That's very common to see where it meets the roof line and starting to show that wear. Okay. Really, the best thing that you can do with this stuff before it gets bad is to use the exterior caulking over the nail holes and have it painted, and keep a good coat of paint on it, and make sure that your painters really shoot up on that lip to make sure it gets painted and sealed. Okay. Vinyl siding. We've all seen this. We've seen it where it's warped like this up here. We've seen it where it's laid great. Underneath it is a vinyl wrap. Vinyl siding is great. You know, some people think it looks cheap. Other people don't mind it. You know, you can power wash it to clean it. It does fade, but you can paint it. There is now vinyl paint that will stick to the vinyl. Really, the only problem with this stuff is it just starts to fade on you. If they pound these nails in too tight, they usually leave them out a little bit so it moves. If they pound them too tight, what you'll see is the vinyl starts to warp. Of course, where the nails are sunk in too far, they don't move, but the other vinyl moves and it starts to twist. We're supposed to leave that nail out a little bit so the whole thing can move a little bit, okay? You'll also see little holes and cracks where someone might have, you know, either hail damage, or someone was running a mower and threw a rock at it, you know, and it breaks or something like that. But, you know, vinyl is good material. It's certainly maintenance-free. It's not going to rot out on you. So in that regard, it's pretty good stuff for the maintenance-free person, okay? It is very durable, and I've never seen anybody paint it. My painters are the ones that tell me that, oh, yeah, we paint them all the time. So have you seen it?
Yeah.
Does it look good?
Yeah.
Does it hold?
It has to be cleaned properly, and then it's got a primer base, or you can prime it.
Primer base, which is good. I mean, we had this one out in Urbandale, and everybody wants to Hardy Flank, and it was vinyl and everything, but it was a yellow house. So I mean, but I kept telling people, you can paint it, you can paint it, you can paint it. So if you don't like the yellow, you can always paint it.
Don't tell my wife.
But yeah, really. But obviously, you see a lot of homes in the vinyl. And it's a good product that lasts a long time. Okay. Let's move on to brick. Brick's fantastic. To say it's maintenance free would be a little misleading, because every now and then you got to tuck point it. And masons are getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I had a guy and it was great. Now I can't get, like, he fell off the face of the earth. But normally what you'll see is, and you can point this out to your clients when you're walking up to them, you just see where it's missing mortar. What they do is they take a grinder and they grind all that out, and then they just mortar it in and let it set up for a little bit, and then they knock it down. And then they acid wash the brick. And so brick is not completely maintenance free, but for the most part it is. I mean, you're not going to have to paint it. You're not going to have to do a bunch. You don't have to worry about rotting out on you. You just have to keep a good mortar in it, okay? You want to be careful of vines growing up of it. Those vines suck the moisture out of the mortar. They look cool. They suck the moisture out of the mortar, and that turns it into like sand. So, yeah, be wary of vines on brick, or vines on any home, really, because how it holds moisture to the brick. Hardy plank. It's good stuff here. Cement board siding. We've all seen this on new houses, right? My picture up here is a common mistake people make in breaking that in with the nail. That could be a problem. Now you see that seam right there? There's a metal piece of flashing about the size of your hand up underneath that. So if anybody ever asks you, well, is water going to get in that seam? Should I caulk that seam? Absolutely not. Do not caulk that seam. Water gets in that. It runs down the flashing and down the siding, okay? Now they say it's 50-year warranty. I'm calling BS. Nothing in our climate lasts 50 years, you know? Nothing does. But it hasn't been around long enough to make that claim. I will tell you this, if you don't keep the nail holes caulked and you don't keep it painted like masonite, it will rot out on you. I've seen it. You had it on a house out in Johnson. You remember that house out there on Ringwood Street? But it will rot out on you. It is not maintenance free. But it is heavy stuff. And it is, you know, it is good stuff. It's more expensive than masonite and smartboard for sure. And they're using it a lot in the upper end homes. But to say that it's maintenance free would be a lie. You have to, in order to get that 50-year warranty, it has to be installed correctly and it has to be taken care of correctly. And there's a lot of things that go into that warranty and how it's painted, double coated, I mean, a lot of things. So, and of course, the big problem with installs with people that don't know what they're doing is the nail pressure on the nail gun. Because you'll see people, they'll shoot the nail too far through it. That nail head should be flush with the siding. They should not be shooting through it. And if they do shoot through it, then you need to take caulk, exterior caulk, and caulk that nail hole. So there's no water getting in that nail hole underneath the board. Okay? Aluminum, metal. You know, this could be painted too, and typically they'll spray a chemical base on it. It would take almost like a weed killer, and they'll put this thing called TSP. It's a chemical, they fill it up with water, and they spray it on the metal aluminum siding. And what it does, it gets rid of that chalkiness that you see on metal siding. You ever rub your hand on metal siding, a bunch of white stuff comes off? Well, paint won't stick to that. But once you spray that TSP on it, that chemical, it gets rid of that chalkiness, and you can paint it. You typically don't see people do aluminum metal today. I haven't seen someone do that in a long time. But it certainly was popular back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and 80s. Okay? It's less pliable than vinyl. Doesn't, you know, if you bend it, it'll crank. You know, the shoulder crank and everything. So, but you don't see much of it installed today. I can't tell you a new home I've seen in the last 20, 30 years that would have metal siding on it. But you'll see homes in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s all day long with it.
They had that vinyl coated steel that they tried, you know, about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it was expensive.
And it never took off really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it looks good painted. It really does. If it's in good shape, it looks good painted. It's not something to be scared of or think you have to replace it. Just look at it like anything else. You know, look for wear and tear. And if everything looks like it should, it's up like it should. It's not hanging off or, you know, like sometimes old siding can do. So, what are we on next? I think that's it for siding. Windows. I'm just trying to give you enough information on windows to be dangerous. You got single hung and double hung. And the single hung is simple. You got side by side. The single hung is simple. You just have the one pane that moves up and down. Hence the name single hung. Double hung, which is Lance's nickname in high school. both panels move. Okay, both panels move. It's pretty simple, right? There's two panels move, double, single panel move. Double hung windows are more expensive window for obvious reasons. And right now, you're seeing a lot of vinyl replacements. You know, unfortunately, they use wood for a very, very, very long time in our area, and we're going to get to that. Why wood is? Well, I guess we're going to go ahead, go to the next one. With casement windows, a roll in, roll out casement windows. They're a more expensive window as far as a double hung or a single hung, right? Or a slider. The one's pretty easy. They slide back and forth, right? You'll see the mechanics will strip in these casement windows, and you can usually buy new mechanics through the, you know, they'll come out and install them. Only your kids or something will strip them. So, but they're a good window. Casement windows are a good window, and you see the majority of homes built in the 90s have a wood casement window. Now, why I like vinyl versus wood is vinyl just doesn't swell and contract like wood. It does move. I mean, to say it doesn't move would be false. It just doesn't move as much. Therefore, the seals on the glass stay better longer. And of course, vinyl doesn't rot out, whereas wood will rot out on you. Go on the next one. You see a lot of these in the Beaverdale area, these weight systems. You ever seen the ropes that go up around the pulley system? This is what it looks like if you take the wood off the middle of the two windows. You have a weight here and a weight here, and it pulls up, and that weight's just meant to keep the window from flying up on you. Okay? Here's some things to remember when you're replacing these windows. You need to take this off and insulate this. There's no good to replace two windows and try to pick up R value and have this big cavity right here. So that you can't see it though, because there's a piece of, they've exposed it here. There's a piece of trim right here. Most people that are putting in windows that are professional know this. They're going to take this off, they're going to stuff this full of insulation, and it's going to be part of your quote. But if you have Mr. Handyman over there that's replaced windows, you might want to bring this to his attention. That needs to be done, otherwise you're not going to pick up any R value of your home. This is what they look, go back. This is what they look like without that on. Those weights are in these columns here, okay? These are the windows I had in my house before I replaced them with a vinyl window. Now typically, you'll have a storm on the other end of these windows. I mean, a lot of people do. And when you have a good storm on a window, it protects it from the elements. And sometimes putting a vinyl window in without a storm, you're not going to pick up any R value. You might have a better look, and it might be a nice, clean vinyl look, but you're not going to pick up any R value. That storm window plus the window itself is actually a pretty good window, okay? And the ones that do have storms on them are the wood windows that look really good. They look like they were just put up. The ones without them start to look like this. These are the casement windows that you're seeing in the 90s. They're all over the place. This is the majority of homes you're selling right now have this going on. And what we have here is condensation that's been rolling down this window because the seal is broken. The seal is broken because the window is moved. It's swollen, it's contracted, it's expanded, it's moved because of the hot and the cold weather extremes that we have. It starts to condensate. The condensation rots out what's called the sash of the window. And then it starts to really look like this. This is beyond repair. This is beyond repair. This, however, might be able to be repaired with new glass or new sash or something like that. The problem with these windows is you're seeing them everywhere. All those homes built in the 90s in West Des Moines, South Side, they had these, and they are going bad.
Yeah,
every single shelter windows,
Shelter.
Windsor windows. They're just even Pella their reputation took a blow because between 1998 and 2004, these were all recalled, and there was a lawsuit. And if you got in on that lawsuit, they'd come and replace them for free. They try to salvage your reputation. But if you weren't in it or privy to it, you're SOL now.
Yeah, they built their windows. Pella got sold a bunch of wood that actually came from a flood, and that's why they rotted.
That's why they rotted.
Yeah,
great. And I'm not here to rag on one provider or another. It's just unfortunate. I don't think wood does very well in our climates, period, when it comes to windows. Vinyl windows you'll see in new construction now is a superior window. And this is what it looks like when it's brand new. This is what our house looks like, with the brand new vinyl. And the vinyl windows are easy to clean. They normally open up. They click open. You can clean them. Again, they don't rot out on you. They will shift. You will see some fog in the window if it shifts on you.
One thing that I would say about the last picture was you can replace the sash.
You can replace the sash. You can.
The reason the middle one's rotted out, it's probably aluminum clad, and the water gets down in between there, and that's why it rots out.
Doesn't have anywhere else to run.
Nope,
just
stays there. And then they probably didn't varnish the bottom of it when they installed it.
Yeah,
they're supposed to.
Some of them, this is beyond that point. Some of them have just a little bit of staining. You can take a light grit sandpaper, sand it down, take matching stain, wear gloves, take a rag, and run your hand across that seal and make them look brand new again, if they're just lightly stained. They get to this point, at that point, they're gone. They're gone. And keep in mind on the vinyl windows when we go next, something that you can tell, you can certainly show your buyer how to open them up. A lot of people think that's cool. They didn't know how to just open up with the clips and come out at you just to clean it. Women are particularly impressed by that because they like clean windows. But also you'll find weeping holes in the bottom of these. And those weeping holes are there for a reason. Because when water comes in, it goes down that channel and they want it out. What will happen though, about once a year, you want to teach your buyers to keep those open, whether it be cleaning them out by hand or dumping a little hot water with bleach down them, because they will get clogged with dirt. And then you have what Galen's talking about to some degree, where water's just sitting there in that channel. Okay? So, yeah, being a good instructor on how to maintain a home to a buyer can also help you build trust and confidence, and that leads to referrals. So I think that's it for the windows, isn't it? No?
You already explained all this.
Okay. Can you go to the next one?
That's it?
Is that it for our presentation?
Yeah.
So in conclusion, we went over roofs, went over electrical in the house, went over plumbing, went over windows, went over siding, and I meant to go over HVAC. I thought we had some things on HVAC here. That does not get put in. We can put that in part two. Okay, we'll go over HVAC and things like that. You should be able to identify even from the outside of the home whether I have a 92% efficiency furnace or an 80%. You shouldn't even have to look at the furnace to know. 90%ers have an intake and an outtake, right? That pipe coming out. 80%ers don't. They just have the straight flue going up to the chimney. But we'll cover that next time in part two. It's good information to know. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what we have? Anything you want to add to it? Anything I missed? You think is important to know? Or no? Lance? Rob?
No, I'm good. I like this stuff.
You're
This
good?
is very good. Very good.
I think it's important to know these things. And again, you're not coming off as an inspector. You're just coming off as a knowledgeable agent. I mean, you sell houses. You should know about it. You should know how they're built. I should be able to blindfold you and put you in the basement of a house and you tell me what era that home was built in. Based on the foundation, based on the plumbing, based on any number of things that identify the eras of a home. Okay?
Did think of one thing, when you were talking about the 2-prong and 3-prong outlets, be careful when somebody says, well, I want this code, because 2-prong is code.
Yeah, and it's not up to your seller to bring up a house to code.
No.
It's up to you to identify everything you know about a house to somebody and let them make a decision based on what you told them. And really where this becomes powerful is that if the roof only has 5 years knowledge left, let them know that now, so if they still like the house, they negotiate based on that knowledge. Not when the inspector gets there and they tell them, oh God, your roof only has 5 years. Now they're up in arms like, oh, cancel the deal, I want a new roof. Now you spend all that time negotiating a deal, getting it signed, getting earnest money over, they're there at the inspection, and then all of a sudden it goes bad. You just wait. You're better off letting them know that stuff up front and letting them pass it and go to the next house than spending all that time putting that deal together only to have it go bad on you. And because you'll have enough of those where, you know, whether it be the sewer line or something in the attic that you just didn't know or couldn't see, you'll have enough of those that'll go bad that way. You know, be the expert. Be the expert. And you will set yourself apart. I'm telling you, you ever with a client that has a mom and dad or a dad, you know, and you're telling these things to, I've had this happen many, many times. The dad will say, I think you're in great hands. I think you're in great hands. And now they have all the confidence that you're going to treat their son or daughter the right way. And you know, and when you get mom and dad's approval, when you're a first-time home buyer, you're in. Okay? So you want to be that expert to build trust and confidence. And they'll get to a point where they won't even look at a house without you. Or they'll be like, hey, I went to a home on Sunday, we really like it, we need you to go through there and tell us everything you know. You know, because they get excited. And also you're teaching them what to look for. So all those things, you'll set yourself apart. Can't tell you how many times I've heard, you know, I was working with an agent and he didn't know any of this stuff. She didn't know any of that stuff. Oh, thank God you found me. Done?